In the early hours of December 26, 1996, a phone call shattered the Christmas morning silence in Boulder, Colorado. What began as a reported kidnapping would evolve into one of America's most perplexing criminal cases. The subsequent investigation would uncover evidence so contradictory and disturbing that it challenged every assumption about the crime itself. Before we start, hit subscribe to stay connected with mysterious discoveries. The morning of December 26, 1996, broke cold and gray over the affluent Chaffee Park neighborhood of Boulder, Colorado. Snow covered the manicured lawns of the upscale Tudor and colonial homes, where families were settling into their post-Christmas routines. At 15 University Hill, the Ramsey residence stood as an imposing three-story home, its red brick facade and white trim reflecting the prosperity of its inhabitants. JonBent Ramsey, a 43-year-old businessman, had built his fortune through Access Graphics, a computer distribution company. His wife, Patricia Ann Ramsey, known as Patsy, was a former Miss West Virginia who had channeled her pageant experience into coaching their 6-year-old daughter, JonBent Patricia Ramsey. The family had returned late the previous evening from Christmas dinner at the home of friends, carrying sleepy children and leftover gifts. At approximately 5:52 in the morning, Patsy Ramsey descended the spiral staircase toward the kitchen. According to her subsequent statements to investigators, she discovered 3 sheets of lined paper laid across the bottom steps. The handwritten note, spanning 2.5 pages, began with the words that would echo through decades of investigation. The ransom demand was unlike anything Boulder police had encountered. It requested exactly $118,000 for the safe return of JonBent, a figure that precisely matched John Ramsey's recent bonus from Access Graphics. The note referenced a foreign faction and contained specific instructions about delivery methods, warning against contacting law enforcement or the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Detective Linda Arndt arrived at the Ramsey home at 8:10 that morning, finding a scene that violated every protocol of kidnapping investigations. Friends and family members moved freely through the house, contaminating potential evidence. The Ramseys had immediately contacted their pastor, their friends, and their attorney, despite the ransom note's explicit warnings against such communications. What struck investigators as particularly unusual was the ransom note's length and content. Most kidnapping notes contain fewer than 25 words. This note contained 374 words, written with a felt-tip pen on paper, torn from a notepad found inside the Ramsey home. The handwriting analysis would later reveal characteristics suggesting the author had attempted to disguise their natural writing style. At 1:15 that afternoon, Detective Arndt suggested that John Ramsey and family friend Fleet White conduct a thorough search of the house. The 2 men began in the basement, moving through the train room and storage areas. At approximately 1 o'clock, they reached a small wine cellar located in the basement's northeast corner. When John Ramsey opened the wine cellar door, he immediately cried out. JonBent's body lay on the concrete floor, covered by a white blanket. A nylon cord was wrapped around her neck, attached to a wooden handle that had been fashioned into a garrote. Her wrists bore marks from cord binding, and a strip of duct tape covered her mouth. The discovery transformed the investigation from a kidnapping case into a homicide. The Boulder Police Department, which averaged fewer than 2 murders per year, found themselves managing one of the most complex crime scenes in the city's history. The contamination that had occurred throughout the morning now became a critical impediment to the investigation. Dr. John Mayer, the Boulder County coroner, conducted the autopsy on December 27th. His findings revealed that JonBent had died from asphyxiation due to strangulation, with a contributing factor of cranial trauma. A triangular piece of her skull, measuring 8.5 inches, had been separated from her head by a massive blow. The injury had caused severe brain swelling and bleeding. The autopsy revealed additional disturbing details. JonBent had consumed pineapple within 2 hours of her death, despite her parents' statements that she had fallen asleep in the car and been carried directly to bed. A bowl of pineapple with milk sat on the kitchen table, bearing only the fingerprints of Burke Ramsey, JonBent's 9-year-old brother, and Patsy Ramsey. Evidence collected from the crime scene created more questions than answers. The garrote around JonBent's neck had been constructed from a length of white cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush from Patsy Ramsey's art supplies. The sophisticated nature of the device suggested knowledge of strangulation techniques uncommon among typical perpetrators. DNA evidence recovered from JonBent's clothing revealed the presence of genetic material from an unknown male. The sample was found in multiple locations, mixed with her blood on her underwear and on the waistband of her long johns. This DNA profile matched no one in the Ramsey family or their immediate circle of friends and associates. The investigation uncovered a series of anomalies that defied conventional criminal patterns. The ransom note had been written inside the house using materials belonging to the family. Handwriting experts examined the note extensively, with some concluding that Patsy Ramsey could not be eliminated as the author, while others found no definitive match to any family member. The house itself presented puzzling evidence. An apparent point of entry through a basement window showed signs of disturbance, including a broken pane of glass and a suitcase positioned beneath the window. However, spiderwebs in the window frame remained intact, and no footprints were found in the snow outside, despite fresh snowfall the previous evening. Boulder police discovered that JonBent had been redressed after her death. She wore oversized underwear marked with the day of the week, Wednesday, though she had died on Thursday. The underwear was part of a package intended as a gift for her cousin, stored in a basement closet. Her original underwear from Christmas Day was never recovered. The investigation revealed troubling aspects of JonBent's life that contradicted the image of a typical 6-year-old. She had been entered in numerous beauty pageants, performing in elaborate costumes and makeup that transformed her appearance significantly. Photographs from these events showed a child styled to appear much older than her years. Medical evidence indicated that JonBent had suffered from chronic sexual abuse over a period of time preceding her death. Dr. David Jones, a specialist in child abuse pediatrics, concluded that the injuries were consistent with ongoing trauma rather than a single incident. This finding suggested a pattern of abuse that had remained hidden from public view. The timeline of events on the night of December 25th into the early morning of December 26th became a focal point of investigation. The Ramseys maintained that JonBent had been sleeping when they returned home from dinner and that they had not heard any sounds during the night. However, a neighbor reported hearing a scream around midnight, followed by the sound of metal scraping against concrete. Burke Ramsey, JonBent's brother, was interviewed by child psychologists and investigators. His statements revealed inconsistencies with his parents' timeline of events. He acknowledged being awake after the family returned home and admitted to going downstairs after his parents had gone to bed, though he claimed not to have seen his sister. The Boulder Police Department's investigation became increasingly complicated by jurisdictional disputes and media attention. The case attracted national coverage, with news crews establishing permanent positions outside the Ramsey home. The intense scrutiny created an environment where normal investigative procedures became difficult to maintain. DNA technology in 1996 was significantly less sophisticated than current methods. The genetic material recovered from JonBent's clothing was sufficient to exclude family members, but insufficient for database comparison. As technology advanced, the sample was reanalyzed multiple times, consistently showing the presence of an unknown male contributor. The investigation identified numerous potential suspects, including registered sex offenders in the Boulder area and individuals with connections to the Ramsey family. Each lead was pursued extensively, with DNA comparisons eliminating dozens of suspects. The unknown DNA profile became the most significant piece of evidence, pointing toward an intruder theory. In 2008, the Boulder County District Attorney's Office issued a formal letter of apology to the Ramsey family, stating that DNA evidence had cleared them of suspicion. The letter acknowledged that the family had been subjected to unprecedented and intense scrutiny, and that the evidence supported their innocence. The case files revealed additional disturbing elements that investigators struggled to explain. A basement window had been left open despite the December cold, and a neighbor reported seeing unusual lights in the Ramsey house during the early morning hours. These observations suggested activity in the house that contradicted the family's account of sleeping through the night. The ransom note contained references that investigators found puzzling. The amount demanded, $118,000, was not only John Ramsey's exact bonus, but also a figure that appeared in action movies the family had recently rented. The note's phrasing included terminology from popular films, suggesting the author had drawn inspiration from fictional kidnapping scenarios. Analysis of the crime scene revealed that the perpetrator had spent considerable time in the house. The garrote's construction, the relocation of JonBent's body, and the composition of the ransom note all indicated an extended presence rather than a quick abduction attempt. This timeline raised questions about how an intruder could have remained undetected for so long. The investigation uncovered evidence of an elaborate staging effort designed to mislead investigators. The positioning of JonBent's body, the placement of the ransom note, and the apparent entry point all showed signs of careful arrangement. This staging suggested intimate knowledge of the house layout and the family's routines. What do you think explains the presence of unknown DNA evidence in a case where the crime scene appeared to be carefully staged? Subscribe to explore more cases where physical evidence contradicts the apparent circumstances of the crime.